problem, Juan Miguel. Thank you very much. So that is biased children, huh? Now, let's have a very simple activity, children. This activity is choose between the two. Is that clear? Post your answer in your chat pane if you prefer that kind of thing. I'll be showing to you two pictures or two things or two anything, and then choose between the two. Which would you be biased for or in favor of? Which would you like better? Is that clear? Or which would you like more? Let's start with the first one. Actually, the category is random. Post your answer chat pane. First, I guess you're familiar with SB19, no? Children is a P-pop group. And BTS. I don't know if BTS is still popular nowadays, but based on the news feeds that I could see, BTS is very popular around the world. Now, which would you prefer or choose between the two? SB19 or BTS? Don't worry, there's no wrong or correct answer here. You're biased for BTS. Okay, how about the others? Don't be shy, children. No choice. Okay, respect that, Joe Person. No problem. BTS for Shalani. Okay, so you are biased for BTS. And I guess the ones who did not answer are not interested about the two, no? Or same kay Jove. Ay, okay. Don't worry, we respect your choice naman. Next, I guess you're very much familiar with 24 oras, hindi natutulog ang balita, or TV Patrol. Which would you prefer, 24 or TV Patrol? Okay. So I guess the ones who are watching TV Patrol, you're just watching it online. Am I right? Because I guess it's not being shown in the television. So 24 oras, TV Patrol. So you're biased for some of you chose 24 oras, some TV Patrol. Still none. Both of them exclude a certain political administration. Yeah? Because mainstream media are also biased. Is that clear, Jefferson? So no one is not biased or no one is unbiased in the world. Even 24 oras and TV Patrol would have their own biases. Is that clear? Last one. Samsung phone or iPhone? Samsung, iPhone. You're biased for Samsung, biased for iPhone. Maybe you're thinking Samsung, sir, because Samsung is affordable. But nowadays, no, Samsung is more expensive than iPhone na or they have the same price na. So iPhone, Samsung. Okay, so I guess you're totally divided. Either Samsung gotta admit my bias for Android because iPhone, yeah, iPhone is not Android, right? Am I right? It has a different operating system. iOS pala. Okay, thank you. So see, now you know that I don't have any iPhone. That's why I'm not familiar about that. I go for Android because it's user friendly. But anyway, who knows, right? By the time that we experience that iOS of iPhone, we will be biased for iPhone already. Okay, so that is just a simple activity that would somehow show us our biases, right? And speaking of bias, are you familiar with this one? DDS versus Dilawan before. But now we have the Pink Lawan and the the BBM Sara supporters. Familiar? Yeah. Now I have a question there. In which situations can we observe the clash between these two groups? Would you mind sharing a situation that you had already experienced or seen? For Chrislyn, they said that women cannot lead. I don't want to be involved in any topics that is related in politics, but why can't women lead and man can? So in short, Christine, it shows equality, right? So you are an advocate of equality, gender equality in leading something. How about the others? Clarence, example of prejudice. So Clarence, what have you observed in our surroundings nowadays? Did you engage in their social media war sometimes or you just remain as audience or viewer? Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Clarence. So, see, children, or even minors. So, like you, children, your teenagers, your minors, you don't have to clash or join the particular group. What's important is that we love our country, we love our family, we love our world and ourselves. Jefferson, Dilawans thought that DDS and Marcos supporters don't like Lenny because of gender, but the truth is that it's obviously that she is a puppet and her speech is unsatisfying. So that's the idea, or that's the situation that you had already encountered Jefferson, right? So see, children, the clash between the Dilawans and the DDS, or the nowadays Pink Lawans versus the BBM Sara whatsoever, the BBM Sara supporters. So how about the others? What do you think had been the effect of this kind of toxicity around us? Anyone? What had been the effect of this toxic situation? Yes, Daniel, please share. Come again. Yeah, so because of the people nowadays are totally not totally confused, but perhaps partly partly confused. Whom will we vote, right? Actually, I'm a voter already. I started voting since 2010. Yeah, that's my first time to vote, 2010. Am I right? How old am I in 2010? So yeah, I forgot already my age. Yeah, it's 2010. But I started voting 2000. I forgot already. But I just remember 2010, and then 2016, and then 2022. Pardon if I got a bit political. That no problem. You know, Jefferson, all of us have the right to share and express something as long as we respect others' opinion as well. For Clarence, it's mostly affect the voters. Correct, Clarence? Because people convincing other people to vote a candidate they want to lead their country. Correct, Clarence? And you know what? One toxic culture about nowadays would be many people are totally judgmental and toxic, judgmentally toxic. How do they say that? For example, they would always brand themselves as intelligent. If you will not vote for this group, that means you're stupid, you're idiot, something like that. Do you agree with me? Rayson, if you agree. Some people, you would really see that in the social media. They judge other because of your choice of candidate. Exactly. Only for example, this is very common in Twitter and in any other social media platforms. Let me share to you an example situation. For example, Juan de la Cruz would vote for BBM Sara. And then Pedro San Pedro, whatever, Pedro de la Cruz would say, no, I would, for example, Juan de la Cruz would vote for BBM Sara. Then Pedro would say, you would vote for BBM Sara. So therefore, you want a thief, or you want a plunderer, or you want a magnanakaw president. So therefore, you are also magnanakaw. You're also something like that. They labeled you like that already. And sometimes, if you say, if Pedro would vote for Lenny Robredo, for example, the the group of Juan de la Cruz would say, you would vote for Lenny, so therefore you are like Lugaw as well. You are like Lutang, something like that. You're like floating something, right? Your mind is floating everywhere. Something like that. And that's a very toxic culture that we should not engage in. Is that clear? According to Jefferson, mostly Lenny fans. Well, anyway, we're not here to debate about that, but we're just sharing our experiences and situations so that in the long run, we may be able to avoid these situations, and we may be able to prevent any toxic culture about that. So please, children, you're teenagers, and I know you love to engage in social media activities, but keep in mind, children, that the best contribution that you could give in this country is not sharing or posting toxic posts in the social media, but your best contribution is to study hard. Is that clear? Finish your studies. In that way, you will be able to have a good job, good opportunities. You will be able to help your family, yourself, and the whole country as well. Gets? So that's your greatest contribution, your studies. Gets? Clarence, all of them are good leaders, but in different ways. Exactly, Clarence. All of, maybe because this is the impression that that leaders taught us, that you cannot be a leader if you will not say bad things about against your enemy, and that's a very bad thing. Let's try to engage in harmonious conversation without humiliating or insulting someone. Gets? Now I have here a very simple activity, another activity. List down some common biases and prejudices you observe in your community, and then pro- what do you think that would you do to prevent or to resolve this problem? Provide your possible resolutions for each of these situations. Or perhaps let's choose a situation that is relatable among you teenagers. For example, for example, if you will buy something in the mall, right? And you're not wearing a decent attire. And then one bias or prejudice there would be they would suspect you as a hold-upper or something like that. What will you do in that situation? Or if you, in case you saw that person, what will you do? Yes, Clarence J. The situation is you're about to go to the mall, you're not wearing a decent attire, or perhaps casual attire, and then the sales lady would suspect you as a thief, something like that. What will you do about that kind of situation? Clarence J. Very good. Very good. So therefore, you will not be affected about that, right? Just go on with your objective, do whatever you want, and life goes on and on. Good job, Clarence. Another situation, unfair treatment on Aita or any member of indigenous peoples. When we speak of indigenous peoples, these are people who are residing or who are part of the tribes, ethnic group. And then things I will do, I will call out the person who discriminates and sympathizes to the Aita and sympathize to the Aita or anyone from indigenous people. So therefore, aside from calling out that person, I will also sympathize or share or pacify that Aita and encourage him to do whatever he wants to do. Is that clear? How about the others? Any other situation of prejudice? A while ago, you shared something about social media, right? About the toxicity on social media. What will you do if you are labeled as DDS or Dilawan or whatsoever, and you're being humiliated in the internet? What will you do? Anyone? What will you do if you're being humiliated because of your choice of candidates in politics? Anyone? Yes, Daniel, please share. Let's have Daniel, Bijan, Carl, then Clarence. So Daniel, let's start with you. Exactly. So you completely ignored them. No, practice the art of dermatology. How about you, Bijan, Carl? Exactly. Ignore. What else? How about in social media? You will ignore and block that person, right? And report. Yeah, Christian, I guess you would agree with that. You will block that person so that there will be no more toxicity in your Facebook. How about you, Clarence? Exactly. So therefore, you don't have to explain more about yourself, right? What's important is that you have your own stand, you have your own opinion, and we don't have to be affected with some toxicity in the internet. Is that clear? Just go on with your life, do whatever you want to do. After all, it is you who would be accountable about that. That's why I really hate the ones who keep on posting in the internet about labeling someone because of your choice of candidate. Sometimes they would say, was that you're you don't know the history whatsoever, try to research, blah blah, whatever. So anyway, let's have now this activity. Same goes with our pre-test. I do have here five situations, and let's try to identify which is bias, prejudice, or none. Is that clear? Meaning, say there's no bias or prejudice in one of the situations. Number one, post your answer in the chat pane na. Write B for bias, P for prejudice, or N for none. Number one, some Muslims are assumed to be terrorists and eventually being discriminated. Bias or prejudice? Number one. Okay. I guess majority agree that it is prejudice. Correct. Number two, Jews during the period of Adolf Hitler were sentenced to death because Hitler despised Jewish people or he hated Jewish people. What is this, bias or prejudice? Some answered bias, some answered prejudice. It's bias. Favoritism. He is biased against the Jews. Is that clear? Bias against. He hated those persons. Next, number three, a teacher who gives good rating to her student who shares the same religious belief with her. Is it bias or prejudice? It's bias, correct. Favoritism, bias for. Is that clear? Bias in favor of someone because you share the same religion. How about number four? A married couple living in a new country where they are free to attend to any of their church services. Okay. Yes, many agree or all of you agree it's none. There's no bias or prejudice in that situation. And number five, Rodrigo was cyberbullied because he supports the government and he is a certified DDS. When you speak of DDS, a Duterte diehard supporter. It's not double death squad, ha? So it's prejudice, correct, being cancelled and discriminated. So therefore, remember the keywords. For bias, either you are against or favor. For prejudice, completely discriminating. That's a keyword, ha? Please keep in mind the keywords. Is that clear? So very good. I guess most of you were able to identify the following situations as bias or prejudice. Now, to generalize our thoughts for today, children, here's our quote for the day from yours truly. Keep in mind, children, that we have our own bias and prejudice about anything, about any situation. And I know you know that. But we should never forget that we also have a compassionate heart to understand everyone's situation. Keep in mind, children, let's all be humane. When we speak of humane in Filipino, makatao. Is that clear? We're not animals. We are humans. So therefore, let's all be humane and let's choose to be better and kinder. Is that clear? Do you agree with that, children? Raise hand if you agree. Good. So keep in mind, children, though we have our own bias and prejudice, that should not be used to hate other people. But instead, that is just one way of understanding this situation, putting yourself in their situation. In that way, we will be able to become humane individual. Not only human, but humane. A person with a heart. Anyway, literal, all of us have our hearts. Is that clear? So to end our session, let me give you this assignment. Read each paragraph and then choose the best answer to the question that follows to find out if you can identify bias. I guess this is already in our... Oh my God, what happened to my Google Classroom? Wait for a while, children. Let me edit my post in our Google Classroom. What happened with my Google Classroom? Okay, let's now proceed with the evaluation part. By the way, ha, children, this is the start of quarter three, ha, or third grading period, ha. So let me share my screen, children. I guess you're very much familiar with this already or much aware with this new post, the start of our quarter three or third quarter. Read each paragraph, then choose the best answer to the question that follows to find out if you can identify bias. So our focus is bias for or bias against. Then post your score in the comment section below. Just click the link, children, that will lead you to the Google form. I guess there's only 5 items, but 2 points each. Is that clear? It's a 5 item evaluation here. Here's the situation and here are the choices. The author shows bias against. I want you to read this paragraph first. By the way, have 2 points each, so therefore it is over 10. Gets? So this shall serve as your asynchronous activity. You may perhaps answer it later, right after our session, or until tomorrow. Is that clear? So any more questions? Raise your hand if you don't have any more questions. Okay. I guess you don't have any more questions, children, and I hope you learned something. Raise your hand if you learned something today. Raise your hand if you learned something today and you have some realizations in life. Very good. So therefore, what's important, children, is that we should always choose to become humane individual. Is that clear? So that we may be able to have a good relationship with one another. With that, I would like to thank everyone who participated in our today's session and see you next week. By the way, children, let me repost our attendance so that the ones who came late will be able to be classified as present in today's session. Again, here's our attendance, children. Please accomplish our attendance form. With that, thank you very much, children. You may now leave our session.